You're listening to The Conversation with Model Mind AI, a weekly check-in with Angela Schultz and Loren Horsager on how to lead through change, stay curious, and get AI ready.
Welcome back to The Conversation. I'm Angela Schultz, and I'm here with Loren Horsager, and we're going to do a bit of a reflection today on the year of 2025. Loren, kick us off.
Sure. Well, let's actually start off with Model Mind. And so just thought we'd give you some updates on what's going on with us. And we've been doing these podcasts now for 6 months, maybe. And it's been quite fun. And if you haven't been paying attention, Angela has actually been doing some I can't remember exactly what we're calling it, Women in AI, maybe something like that. But we have, she's been interviewing quite a few people. I will be starting soon doing some a little bit more technical interviews with people that are implementing AI, and we're going to continue some of that. We will also have Angela and I on quite a bit going forward. You know, this is kind of an experiment for us to kind of try podcasting and as a way to engage with people, answer your questions, and hopefully provide some useful information. And I think we've had really good feedback from it. It's also been really good. Angela and I don't actually get to spend all that much time together. And so it's really fun for us to have these conversations because we get a dialogue and talk about things. And we've actually been able to speak at a few things recently together, which has been really positive. And part of it is because we have this experience talking on the podcast. So I would like to say, you know, if people want us to talk about something, reach out, let us know. We love that feedback, but we also we want to make sure this is helpful for people. And we've gotten some really good feedback. And we do take your feedback and we'll try to answer those questions. So I think one of the things we have been asked a lot, we work with a lot of business groups as we go talk to business leaders about AI, and you know it can be confusing, and there's a lot of questions that come up. So we actually have this session we do in person about kind of top 10 questions that come out of that people want answered around AI. And sometimes they're really tactical and sometimes they're really strategic, but it ends up being a good conversation. It kind of gets people thinking depending where they're at. And it helps us. It's usually our foundational presentation to people is because it helps set a baseline, right? So one of the challenges with AI is getting that baseline, and that helps. But what we thought we'd do today is kind of answer some of those questions, but more from the perspective of like what's working and what's not working, right? And so I think if we start off by saying what's working with AI holistically, or maybe large language models, I should say, I think it's interesting. Each of the products out there has had a lot of massive updates, right? I think one of the notable ones for this year is the Copilot update that came out late this summer, I think it was. And I would say none of us were super big Copilot fans prior to that, but that really changed how effective that is as a tool. So we actually recommend Copilot heavily now because, and it's still a little bit different because it's an integrated app in, an integrated tool into all your Office platform, but it's a massive update, right? So there's lots of updates to tools, but that's probably one of the biggest ones we've seen this year from the AI perspective itself. Would you agree? Would you add anything to that?
I would. And I think one of the things that I think that is working with Copilot right now is people are actually getting to start exploring AI. And I've noticed a shift in questioning, even in our speaking engagements or in class. I think prior to people having access to Copilot in the workplace, all of this AI conversation was mostly theoretical. And I noticed that now the questions are starting to become more applicable to real world scenarios. People have experience, and now that they have some experience, they're asking better questions and they're running with it, right? So absolutely, I think it's just giving people access to AI that maybe didn't have it before. And it's less of a frustrating tool than it was a year ago. So now people are actually seeing the benefits of what's possible. Even if it's those small wins, it doesn't have to to rework your entire system to be a win, right? It's these small wins that employees are using and seeing and then sharing with other employees to really kind of spark this AI adoption across companies,
So,
which is
so
exciting.
let's talk about that a little bit. So, we're in the business of training people on AI, and I think you're spot on what we've seen in people are getting deeper into this. So they're asking much better questions. Part
Mhm.
of that is as we take them through classes, I think it's really fun to see. We had our agent class yesterday, which that's the third or fourth class in the series, really. And I think it's fascinating the questions that some of the people who were in class yesterday, questions they asked 2 months ago when they started on this journey, the
Mhm.
questions they're asking now, the problems they want to solve for haven't changed. Their perspective on how to solve those effectively and what they can do has changed significantly, right? And so
Mhm.
it's fun to have this conversation that is a much, much deeper, better conversation that people can understand. You talk about how memory works, and they have a really good foundation for, hey, how do I think about this? Because that's why my AI is going to work or not work, right? So I
Mhm.
think that's pretty interesting. But what would you say? So let's go a little deeper there. If a company is looking to get started or get deeper with AI, what do you think is the right way to do that?
You read my mind. That's honestly the next thing I was going to say is that exact answer to that question because I was just at an event this week. It was phenomenal. People were sharing ideas about what they were doing and how they were implementing AI. But then I noticed the follow-up question was always focused on hiring a single person to take on the role of the implementation and the adoption and the creation of tools or how to use AI in the company. And I did notice a little pushback, but right now I notice people kind of have this unicorn employee or this golden employee that's really doing all the heavy lifting. And it was all I could do not to say, no, 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 don't put it all on a single person. That's the benefit of AI is that it's approachable and usable by anyone. And so I would say that the biggest deficit I see is people are trying to hand this off to a single person. And what I really wish is that they brought everybody along for the ride, because I mentioned in one of our speaking events this week, I said AI adoption is about raising the floor, right? And AI adoption is about the people and upskilling everybody, from people boots on the ground to answering the phones to some of the leadership and the more strategic thinking. And so I think it's really valuable to make sure that you're including multiple perspectives in the process.
I think that's interesting because the other side that we see this on is um, people are like, well, I'm just going to go hire a company to come in and build this for us. And
Yes.
now we're not against you doing that. That's not a bad solution. However, we don't think that should be the starting point because this is not like we treat this as a technology, right? And it is a technology,
Sure.
but you should not treat this like any other technology you've ever implemented because it's not. So it really comes down to how do we take our business experts and empower them
Hmm.
by giving them the knowledge and the training, and then potentially partnering them with either an internal or an external resource that can actually help with some of the techie parts of this. But so much of this is not techie.
Hmm.
So it's about what do I understand about my process that I want to automate or how I want this agent to work. It's about coming up with the business solution, the business process for that. And nobody outside your company is going to have that figured out. Like that's what blows my mind. There's so many people, I think, on the what's not working. There are a lot of people who are way over promising on what AI can do. And then people, they go do projects for people and they fail. And we get calls from these people all the time because like, hey, we're stuck. We committed to doing this project and now we can't get it done. And there's good reasons for it that they don't have the experience on, or there's this misalignment between like the business user doesn't understand what's possible, so they think this is the golden ticket to solve all these problems. And it's not, but it can solve a lot of problems. It can't do everything, and it can't do everything well. So we have to be really judicious in how we apply AI to get the value out of it that we need. And also, I think this all leads to one of our other perspectives is one of the things we see that the two things that we see are really, really valuable in an organization. If you train some of your team, you don't have to train everybody, train some of your team, especially the really tactical people that are doing stuff every day, right? And then have a process that maybe 15 minutes every week, they're sharing out what they did with AI. And that will start to bring the rest of the team along. What we see when we do open classes, when we have people from different companies, we do this process inside a company, they start to share and everybody starts to see, oh, I want to do something not quite that, but I want to do something a little bit different, right? And that is one of the most powerful things that we can do. And then the other piece that goes with that is now let's say you want to come up with some ideas on how you're going to apply AI. We see a lot of companies where, the CEO says, hey, we're going to become an AI enabled company. Fantastic, right? But then they'll follow up with, and we're going to roll out this solution. And these are the solutions that fail, because it's not the business people that actually understand the problem that are actually rolling this out. So there's so many cases where those fail because they're not well designed. And there's a much better way, like when we think about rolling out IT projects, it's like, hey, we're going to implement this product and it's going to take 6 months, 12 months, 50,000, $500,000, whatever it's going to be. That is the wrong approach for most AI solutions. And instead, we like kind of the hackathon approach where it's like, hey, let's put a team together for an afternoon or even less, and actually let's build a prototype of this. Maybe we don't have access to all the data we need for this, but can we prove out that this works, right? Or find out how it doesn't work. Well, now we've spent a very little time, very little effort, very little cost to actually prove out the idea. Now you have to think about like, how do I productionize this? How do I get access to the right resources? But if you know the solution can work, and now you can kind of start to quantify like, here's what systems we have to change, or here's what we have to integrate with, here's where we're going to start to see the cost. You can weigh the cost benefit analysis before you even dig into this. And we've actually seen clients that's like, hey, we had an idea, we tested it, and it turns out the cost of running the AI doesn't solve our problem, right? It's too expensive. Don't do the project, right? Or can you do it with a lower cost model? Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes that's been the solution. But you can actually figure these things out before you go spend a huge amount of time and energy. And if you're hiring like a contractor to do this, they obviously want to do a project, and so their goal is to get to the project, not get to the solution necessarily. So just something to think about, as you're looking at doing this. There are some pretty economical ways to prove out some of the concepts, and that's what we really try to do. Like, we have these hands-on classes. The reason we have hands-on classes is so that people can actually try to build something to prove out the idea. Maybe it's not going to be a production worthy system at that point. If you're just using it for yourself, maybe that doesn't matter. But if you're going to roll it out to your team or your company or clients or something, now you need to start productionizing that. But you're on your way because you've actually had an opportunity to actually build something and test it. The other piece of that is you have business people that now, I guarantee you're going to want to change these systems. The AIs are going to change, your tools are going to change, your business process is going to change. You have people that actually understand what's happening that can interject and potentially update the system. Maybe that, they're not going to go out and write code, but they can update your prompts, your instructions that are going to help drive the system correctly.
And in a way, to me, that's the most powerful component, is allowing whatever solutions they build to evolve and kind of grow and elevate, and they'll probably branch into 3 other projects, right? Or whatever
Yep.
it may be. It brings up something that happened just this week. So I taught a group on this week how to build custom GPTs. And then the next day I met up with you and we taught an agents class. And many of the people from the GPT class signed up for the agent class then. They kind of wanted to see the progression and where kind of the end game was. So we had the pleasure of having people in both classes this week back to back. And at the end of the first class, there a couple of the people, I always ask for reflection. And I said, okay, after building your own GPTs, how are you feeling? And somebody responded, I feel powerful. And then the next day they were in class and I said, okay, now how are you feeling? Even more powerful, right? And this was a non-technical person that was really hesitant to take the agent class, fearing that it would be a bit too technical. And then there was another gentleman in class who said, I said, how do you feel? And he goes, simple. I said, do you want to elaborate on that? He goes, no, it's simpler. It was easier than he thought it was going to be. But it takes time to kind of wrap your head around and ask some of those really strong questions. But to me, just that key reflection of simple and I feel powerful, like that's what I mean by bringing other people on board. And that was, all in a matter of 2 days, we were able to get people at least the experience of what they can actually do with AI in a fairly simple way, but then the potential is, sky's the limit.
I think we should add one thing here. So, we focus on doing this training, right? And one of the other things we know is working. We have had a whole lot of conversations. I've had a whole lot of conversations in the last 2 weeks with people that we trained 12 months ago, 18 months ago, and they have reconnected with us. And it's so fascinating because they have been telling me stories about, hey, I went through class and I use it every day to do this, this, and this, right?
Mhm.
And now they're re-engaging with us for some more advanced stuff, because the agents, as an example, have changed and like what's possible. But I think it's fascinating. We talk about the value of going through and learning this for yourself, like our 101 class, our 201 class. Those are actually tools and processes that you can apply now and continue to apply to get those efficiencies. I just think it's really cool that that's what we've said, and now we've seen the proof that that's actually true. That if you get trained and know how to do this, and you do it regularly, you're going to get more and more proficient. You're going to build more efficiencies out of it, which is really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree. It's interesting to me. Some people are coming and chatting about how they're implementing AI, which is really exciting. But I think where we come in a lot of times is where they're frustrated with AI. And between you and
Mhm.
I, we can really find a lot of workarounds or solutions of either experience that we've had with other projects or other people, or just our own experience. The fact that this is my full-time job, um, is such a benefit when I can share that information with other people who have full-time jobs and aren't able to stop always what they're doing, press pause for 6 weeks and become educated on all things AI. So
Right.
it's really beneficial to have access to someone, whether it be a phone a friend or a class. And one of my favorite things is when I see people pop into office hours, even a month or two after they've been to class, and they just want updates, or they've maybe taken it to the next level and now they're ready for a more complex challenge, which is kind of exciting too. So
Mhm.
good.
Um, let's change directions here a little bit. So let's kind of jump back to like what's happening with AI. So we talked about the products in Copilot in particular, and all the other products are updating and stuff. But um, what are the challenges with this? Well, I think one of the challenges tends to be that the tools kind of suck, right? And they've gotten significantly better. When we think about like agents, when we think about workflow engines, there are much, much, much better tools, but they're not still perfect. And I think 2026, we're going to see a massive update in tools now. But the flip side of this is the AI that's out there right now, any of these models from any of the top vendors are good enough for almost everything we want to do from a business perspective. And I think that kind of blows people's mind, right? So it doesn't matter if we're trying to build out an agent or a workflow or some automated system or tool built into a product we offer, the AI is good enough. The challenge always comes down to the tools we have access to actually enable that. And so I think that's really fascinating. The only place where the AI maybe isn't good enough is video right now, right? So even audio, it's incredibly good at, and very performant. But the great thing is the AI is going to continue to get better, right? It's not stopping. But that's not the problem. The problem is the tools that we're using in order to enable this. It's the governance tools to manage this. It's the willingness of IT to expose it. It's access to the tools to actually make this work for the things we need it to work for us. So I think that's one of the challenges, and that's still going to be a challenge in 2026, but I think it's going to get better, which I'm very excited about. We've seen some massive updates in the last 2 months. One of my favorite things, we use this in our agent class, is Agent Builder from ChatGPT and from OpenAI. It's a fantastic no-code tool, and we had class, like Angela was saying yesterday, teaching this, and nobody in that class is probably actually going to use Agent Builder, but it's a fantastic tool for understanding how to think about agents and understand this, and then they can go work with the right people to actually build them in the way that they need. Most of them are Microsoft oriented, and they want to build Microsoft oriented tools, which is great, but there's not a great WYSIWYG way to do that, where this allows us, a non-technical person, to really create a proof of concept and prove that proof of concept out. One of the areas where tools have gotten quite a bit better recently and are going to get a lot better next year is on the evaluation process, right? So how do we actually evaluate, is our AI working? Like, if we think about, here's a proof of concept, is this worth doing? And then how do I productionize it? And is it working in production? There's some processes out there. We have our own process that we talk about, but there's also processes built into a lot of these tools now, which are really fantastic. The new Microsoft Agent Framework has an evaluation process built in. So there's this capability to actually do good evaluation, and we can then guarantee, we can say, hey, this agent, this system is operating at 99% accuracy or something, right? And or whatever it is, and what our target is depends on what we're doing. So we can make sure we're hitting those numbers depending on what our process is. So which is very exciting, and then that allows us to make changes, change out a model, change out capabilities, and still know that we're going to hit those expectations based on the data that we're running through it. So I think it's worth knowing that, but the AI is good enough. I think that's really important to understand. It's everything else that goes around that's getting better, but still has a ways to go.
It's interesting. I think you have a high bar when it comes to expectations of a tool, because honestly, where I'm coming from, I am over the moon with the tools right now, because when I think of Make or Zapier or even the Agent Builder that you mentioned, I feel like the usability, the visual component of it for designing, I think my fear was, when I use these tools, I'd be looking at a wall of code, and that's not the case. It's very intuitive. It's very helpful. Many of them have chat functionality built in, so you can kind of be guided through the process. So I'm not ready for the tool advancement quite yet, because I'm still learning the current tools, which is kind of interesting. I had the privilege of sitting in on one of your software developer classes, and it was a 4-hour class, and we were 3 hours into it, and I said, wait, when are you guys going to actually start coding? Because you were building an app, and it was wild. By the end of the 4 hours, you had built an app from scratch, and had great design conversations. But it's interesting how much time and effort goes into just the design process, because the actual building process now, of what I'm observing, is really shortened and more condensed than it ever used to be. So there's that hackathon approach, like take 4 hours and have your team design and build a mock-up of an app. It may not be production ready in 4 hours, but I mean, to me, that's a tool that is capable of quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, on our software development class, three-quarters of the way through class, we've written no code, and but we've spent some time in the tools, and mostly it's the process. So a lot of things, what we find with AI is it changes our process to some degree. So not our business process, but maybe the way we execute that, right?
Yeah.
And so in software, we use something called spec-driven development, right? Well, that's different from what most developers have approached in the past. So we have to walk through this, and then there's setting up that tool to make that process work. But once you do that, that is the way that AI really understands our software. So we get better software by going through this process, right? So now the AI can do more work more easily. That whole same concept applies to every other business process we're trying to solve.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
go ahead. Did you have
Oh,
more?
I was just gonna say, I said that's why sometimes in class, especially when we get into the higher level courses of building GPTs or agents, there's always that moment where you look out into the room and everybody's just deep in thought. And they're not actually building anything or doing anything, but it takes a lot of time to process and to
Mhm.
think differently than you've done work before. But I do believe that effort, that engagement, that kind of deep thinking processing ends in a better solution. So
Yep.
it's worth it. It's worth it.
Let's wrap up with just some what we've seen for solutions that are working. So, we're going to just kind of walk through a few of the projects that we've seen. So, we have, I think one of the more interesting ones is we worked with a client that ended up going through our training as trying to figure this out. And they basically, the CEO of the company has written all their blog posts forever, right? And I think we used to really focus on like the marketing use case, and I think this goes back to like why that's still something valuable to focus on. But they work in a highly technical industry that has a lot of change in the last 18 months. So if they used AI to write any blog post content, it was terrible because it was all outdated information that was maybe good 15 years ago, and that's what the AI was trained on. So it did not get produce a good result, right? Well, what happened is we trained their marketing person, and she then went, and now their process is she goes and interviews on Teams and transcribes this. She interviews one or two of their engineers every month, and she takes those transcripts and she loads it into a custom GPT that they built specifically for writing marketing content, right? And what's great is the voice is still the CEO's voice, but he doesn't have to write any of this. And I believe in the last 6 months, he hasn't edited any of these. He reviews them and he's approved everyone as is. But it's current information, highly technical information. The marketing person doesn't necessarily even fully understand all this, but it's well written, and it's written in the CEO's voice. So it has really streamlined the process to put out good content that's valuable to their customers, which is really exciting. And they've actually closed some really big accounts based on this information being out there. So I think that's one really interesting story that is not a hard process to replicate, requires no technical capabilities to do that process, right? Non-technical marketing person
Mhm.
can go through our class and actually learn how to do that, which is pretty exciting. Um,
Will you tell one more story? Because this one I have been retelling and it's getting a lot of attention. And I think it's an example of something you can start small. And that's your pipe
well,
drive chat GPT
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
connection. Like the ability
Uh,
to integrate some simple tools, but to make your life easier.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were going to go a different route. I didn't want to share that
Okay.
one. So, what I will say, so I I'm a salesperson, right? I have to be a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson by trade, and I hate being a salesperson. I'm probably not a very good salesperson, but I hate. We use Pipedrive for our CRM solution, and I hate entering in people's information into it. I'm terrible at doing it. Once it's in there, I'm pretty good at managing like, hey, we're going to follow up with someone, the sales process that we need to do in there. But I hate getting information in there. So I actually created a custom GPT that I plugged into the Pipedrive API. And now what's fantastic, some of the time I'm driving around and talk, and I'll be in my car. And if you see Angela or I driving around and we're talking in our car, we're probably talking to ChatGPT or Copilot because it's such a fantastic tool. But I have a custom GPT that I can drive around and I can actually just tell it, hey, create a new contact and a deal for this client, and then put on all this information that we just talked about. And then it's there and it's in the system and I didn't have to type it in, which is really, really, really nice for me. And it has helped make my part of keeping up to date on our sales process much better, which is fantastic. So I think there's a lot of cases where that matters, right? Maybe it's from a service person, maybe it's from anybody in an organization. It's just this way of using voice now to actually interface with a system, another system that you already have, and getting the data in there properly is just such a fantastic way to do it. So for me, it's Pipedrive as my Achilles heel of getting updated, and now it kind of solves a problem that I can just go out. So I can either type it in when I'm at my computer, or I can just I can also just grab an email and just drop it into chat and say, hey, create records for all this, right? And it's going to do it, and it's going to load all that information, create notes on it, and everything that I need to do, which is really, really slick. So I think that's a fantastic one. Let's take another example. So we have a client we're working with, and I think this is a little bit technical, but we're excited that AI, we try to teach lots of non-technical classes. We also teach some very technical classes, but the great thing about it is there's lots you can do without being technical, but with some technology, you can be way more sophisticated. And so they have a whole lot of marketing data, and they want to expose this marketing data internally to their marketing team to be able to go research and find trends and information about what's happening with their customers and stuff. And so it was interesting. They have one IT person on board, and he has done some development work like 20 years ago, but not since then. And he went through our development training, he's gone through our other classes, and he has been able to create a system now and deploy this in-house that actually leverages all of this data, imports the data from all these different sources, and then provides almost like a ChatGPT interface where a non-technical marketing person can come use natural language and make queries and say, hey, can you compare this product versus this product over these time periods and tell me what's working in, styles of marketing? Should we use video or carousels, or, what is the right way to market this type of product that works based on real data, right? They don't need to know anything about the database. They don't need to know anything about the technology. They can just dialogue with the AI. And then once you get some of that data back, you can actually dig deeper, right? Because it's a chat conversation at that point, which is really, really interesting, especially when you can kind of go back and augment it with additional data as you want to have different conversations. So I think these type of solutions are, I think this took 2 months to develop, which is pretty cool for a pretty valuable solution, right? And he's having fun developing it, which has been a great opportunity for him to actually get engaged in this. So a couple other things we're seeing. So we've been working on a CFO agent. We talk about this in class and stuff. And I think this is an interesting solution. As we get into agents, the tools are starting to catch up. But one of the gaps is how we think about memory. And we've had a bunch of podcasts. We're not going to go into that right now, but memory is such a fascinating thing. But we're seeing some of the solutions for that come out. And that's where some of these opportunities exist to actually have the right tool with the right memory and be able to create things that weren't available really 6 months ago, maybe, right? So we're finding lots more opportunities like that as we're thinking about agents. We've seen a lot of workflow implementations that have been really successful. One of the concerns with workflow implementations, if you're thinking about AI, is it cost effective, right? So we've seen cases where people build a prototype and then they realize that this prototype is going to get run, 100,000 times a week or something, and it's going to save $500 a month. And you know what? You're going to spend $500 a day to actually make it run because the AI is too expensive for the number of calls you're going to make. Well, we actually did a project with a client where they took legal documents in, and it would have been okay at the higher rate, but it turns out we didn't need the higher end model. We could actually go to like a mini model and it worked perfectly fine, which cut our cost by about 90%, right? And so there's lots of opportunity just to think about things that way where we can actually change our models. There's lots of things we have access to actually change us, but it's something we have the option to configure in a workflow And it's something that we need to think about as we're building out workflows, because that's one of the gotchas where you built it and it's really not worth the value once you built it. But you can test all that up front, and it's pretty easy to do. Um, and we also have a process that we work through in our classes is how do you evaluate these systems to even know if you're going to hit the rates, the quality expectations you want, right? So we have to hit quality as well. So there's a process for that. This is something like you talked about in the hackathon, the first couple hours you do this, you should be running through and validating this, and you can tell right off the bat if this is something you should proceed with or not.
Mhm. All these projects and ideas, it makes me realize that they're so individualized. Everything you just described is a very specific problem with a very specific solution. And maybe that's one of the gifts of AI, is that it's not a prepackaged off the shelf solution, right? This is you are designing something for a very specific problem, which lends itself to why it's so important for you to understand it and maintain it yourself, because you have that domain knowledge that's required to make sure that it's working the way you want it to, but also improve it after you create something that's even production ready.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the hardest parts of my job, I will say, is that I'm not teaching a specific strategy or a specific way of operating. It's the application of this tool to everybody in the room. And that's
Mhm.
where some of the conversations become really exciting. Like, oh, you're doing that. I could do this, but with a different industry or with a different workflow, whatever it may be. And everybody who goes through the classes find their niche and their specific use
Mhm.
case. And that's kind of what is exciting about it, is that you don't get these generic interactions or blog posts, as you mentioned earlier, right? You're
Mhm.
actually dialing in and kind of calibrating the AI for you.
Right. Which we were training in our agent class yesterday, right? And I think one of the most fun parts that we do, and we get asked this all the time, is what are other people doing, right? And what we do in
Mhm.
class is we have paper up on a wall, and everybody gets their own sheet, and everybody goes to the wall, and we start actually designing out a solution that someone wants to create. And then we talk through in class, how would you go about doing this? What part of this is an agent? What parts of workflow? How, what else has to happen? What data needs to support this? And that is an incredibly powerful thing for people to kind of start to think about how this comes together and how you actually implement something. And then to see how other people are doing it with the different types of solutions they're coming up with, because that also triggers, say, hey, we have that problem. Not quite like
Mhm.
that, but ours is similar, and we could solve that problem as well, and we didn't think about it. So I think
Mhm.
that's a really fun process when people start to get aha moments from seeing what other people are creating and ideas they have to create.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I think we're ready for a prompt of the week, and we're looking forward to getting back to our regular routine here in the next year. But right now, let's dive into your prompt of the week for and wrap up today.
Well, my prompt of the week is fairly simple today, but I think I want to add an amendment to it, because it's very simple in the sense of, I want you to go to any chatbot, chat GPT, agent, a custom GPT that somebody shared with you, like, hey, I've got this great GPT that helps create marketing content, I'm going to share a link with you. But then when you open it up as a user, you really have to understand the scope of what it's meant for. We just talked about all of these solutions are so personalized that you really need to understand the scope of what's possible. So the prompt is easy. It's what can you do and what can't you do? So if you go into Copilot or ChatGPT or a GPT that somebody sent to you, start by asking this question. I think it's really going to open your eyes up to what's possible with AI, but also kind of rein in the reality of what it's not meant for in this particular GPT or this particular solution because of the customization. So go out and try what can you do, what can't you do, but also in addition to this, I find that because it's changing so quickly, you mentioned people took classes a year ago, right? So much has changed since then. So besides this question, maybe ask like, what's changed? What's new? Copilot just had a huge conference in November, and you may have noticed a lot of additions to your Copilot subscription. So ask, hey, what happened in November at the Copilot conference, right? Try to stay updated as much as you can to know what the advancements are and what's possible. Because if you tried the solution 6 months ago and it didn't work, try it again now and you might get a better result. But really think about the personalization. That makes a big difference in these solutions.
So the second takeaway from this is that if you build a chatbot and put it on your website, Angela's probably coming out and testing it and trying to find out what it can and can't do. So this gets into our conversation we had yesterday in class, which is you should have guardrails on your chatbots, especially if they're public, for people like Angela that are going to come and test and hack away at it and see what it can and can't do. So it's good to, things we need to think about and things that we teach you in class. So
okay, a fun one. Besides trying to break the chatbots, I'm also really, my word of the week is adaptive. I'm trying to make all of my GPTs adaptive. So I'm seeing and testing how other chatbots, and by adaptive, I mean, can it adapt to my personality or different personalities of users? Can it adapt to my knowledge level of whatever they're trying to sell me? So if I ask a high level question or low level question, I'm really testing to see if it meets me where I'm at. So we'll see.
Sweet. Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. 2025 was the year of the agent. Do you still think that's a viable theme for the year of 2025?
No.
No.
I think it's 2026.
Okay.
2026 is going to be the year of the agent and the year of memory. That's my prediction.
Okay. More to come. So what works today, we're experimenting, we're sharing, we're building out the small wins. But what doesn't work is treating AI really, like you said best, a traditional IT project, or maybe even just the way we've been operating the last couple decades. We need to change that up. And we've got some great ideas. So reach out to us if you're looking for strategies or how to get started. Loren, any last words for 2025?
No, it has been a fun year. I mean, this is super exciting. What's possible now. Angela and I have been at a few events and I get super excited because what's possible now are things I wanted to do 20 years ago. And it's so excited that we can train on that now, like agents, and actually have tools that work, and the tools will continue to get better, but there's tools that work now that can actually do some of these things. So I'm just super excited what 2026 is going to bring around, especially agents and memory, but lots of other areas that integrations, things like that are going to be very, very cool. And we talk to a lot of people that have a lot of brilliant ideas that they want to go do something with it. It gets me super excited to see what our students have done and what they've built, what other people that we work with that are building out there. So very excited about 2026 and excited to connect with more people about that in 2026.
Fantastic. Well, if you're looking for more resources, don't hesitate to reach out to us or head to our website at modelmind.ai. But for now, stay curious, keep experimenting, and keep this conversation going. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being part of the conversation with Model Mind AI. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and stay curious.